What's up, sports fans? This is the NCAA College Sports Channel. It is time to give you my official updated college football top 25 rankings as we head into week number 13 of the 2025 college football season. We got a couple of weeks remaining here of this regular season of 2025, and we got some major changes to make here to this top 25. We got some new teams in here, but also we got some changes to the top 5, and then also a little bit of the top 10 as well. So let's go ahead and jump right into it here as we got 2 weeks remaining here in the month of November, and we got the playoff rankings coming out tomorrow night, which obviously I think could be a big shakeup. Let's be honest, it was a chaotic weekend in week number 12 with some big upsets playing out. So let's jump right into this top 25 for me, starting with the bottom and working our way to the top. So 21 through 25, I got James Madison at number 25, Tulane at number 24, Texas at 23, Arizona State at 22, and then Houston at number 21. So James Madison, new to the top 25 for me. They jump in here not because of the record, but just the way this team has been playing. I've been liking this James Madison team a lot. Yes, they're a Sun Belt team. They don't have much on the resume, but the one loss coming to a Power 4 team in Louisville in a game that they only lost by a couple of touchdowns, and they were leading in that game, I think, momentarily, but then they lost that game. So they don't have much of a win resume, but the one loss to Louisville, who is a 7-4 team now, which is not a great loss, but it's good enough for James Madison to be in the top 25, just based off of how they've been playing. And I know I could put like another Power 4 team in this top 25, but I just don't think there's much of a resume for, some of these other Power 4 teams to jump in. So James Madison in the top 25 for me finally for the first time this year. Tulane at number 24. I think Tulane has a much better resume compared to James Madison. Tulane with a couple of losses. One of them comes to a top 5 team in Ole Miss, and that's really the reason why I put Tulane in this top 25. The other bad loss, though, comes to UTSA. That's a bad loss there for Tulane, so that's not a great loss for them. And then the wins come, some of those wins come against like a couple of Power 4 teams. I think they have a win over Duke, and they also have a win over Northwestern. Those are two 5-5 teams, which are not really great wins, but they're against Power 4 opponents. So, and then the loss to Ole Miss is what puts them in the top 25 as well. So Tulane at number 24. Texas at number 23. So Texas takes a massive drop for me after the loss to Georgia. This past Saturday night, they got blown out in that game 35-10. But what keeps Texas in this top 25, from falling out, is basically the win over Oklahoma. That's their best win by far this season, and Oklahoma is a top 10 team. And yeah, Texas has that win over Oklahoma. And if you go back to that game, I think John Mateer was not fully healthy, so that's the reason why Texas kind of gave credit for that win. And then obviously the 3 losses for them. One of those losses comes to a very bad Florida team, and that's what really keeps them from being in the top 20 is the really bad loss to Florida. And then the 2 losses come to Georgia and Ohio State, who are both in the top 5. So Texas doesn't drop for me out of the top 25 because of those losses and then the win over Oklahoma. But what keeps them out of the top 20 is the bad loss to Florida. So yeah, Texas at number 23, Arizona State at number 22. The Sun Devils are back in the rankings for me for quite some time. They're sitting there at 7-3. They have 3 really good losses to like Big 12 teams, except, one of those 2 losses, 2 of those losses come to a Big 12 team, and then one of those 3 losses come to Mississippi State, who is a 5-5 team. So yeah, that's probably their bad loss there, but you look at the couple of losses to Houston and Utah, they got, blown out in both of those games, but they're really good losses enough. So Arizona State also has a win over Texas Tech, which really puts them in the top 25 as well. So for that reason, I decided to put a 7-3 Arizona State team back in the top 25 for that win. So Arizona State at number 22, Houston at number 21. Again, the win over Arizona State because of the head-to-head. I got to put the Cougars here ahead of this Arizona State team. They did not play this past weekend. You look at the 2 losses that they got. Texas Tech obviously is the big loss for them. And then they have a loss to a one loss, or not like a one loss, but a really bad loss to West Virginia. Virginia, and a team that Arizona State just beat. So maybe Arizona State should be ahead of Houston, but I got to go with the head-to-head here, and the Cougars are ahead of the Sun Devils because of that head-to-head. And if you go back to that game, it was not even a close game at all. Houston dominated, and yeah, Arizona State made it a close game at the end, but it was kind of a dominating performance by the Cougars. So Houston at number 21 because of that head-to-head over Arizona State, and that's a really good win there for the Cougars. So these are my rankings from 21 through 25. Let's now go from 16 through 20. We got SMU, ignore the Georgia Tech graphic there twice. You got Georgia Tech there at number 18, but SMU definitely at number 20. And SMU, it should be 7-3. They're not 8-1, so messed up on the graphic there. SMU at number 20, though. Wake Forest at number 19, and Northern Michigan graphic as well. I don't know why I just, couldn't really change those two, names there, but I didn't want to do the video twice. Georgia Tech, though, at number 18, Michigan at 17, and then Virginia at number 16. So SMU did not play this past weekend. What puts SMU in the top 20 is the win over Miami. That's by far their best win by far of the season. A couple of losses to Big 12 teams and TCU and Baylor, and then the third loss come to Wake Forest, who is just ahead of them. And yeah, Wake Forest is 7-3. They're not 7-2 either. So both of these teams are 7-3 teams, and they're both ranked in the top 20. Now, Wake Forest has a win over Virginia, which is definitely their best win by far. Virginia is ahead of them because they have the better overall record. And I know Wake Forest should be ahead of Virginia, but I can't really put Wake Forest ahead of Georgia Tech because of the head-to-head. And yeah, that's one of the losses that Wake Forest has, is to a Georgia Tech team that's ranked in the top 20 for me. Georgia Tech has a loss to NC State, which obviously is not looking really good now. NC State just got blown out by Miami. But Georgia Tech's win over Wake Forest is huge for them, and that's what really keeps them in the top 20 for that reason. So yeah, Georgia Tech at number 18. Michigan at number 17. Not a great performance against Northwestern. And I'll be honest, I think Michigan got pretty lucky in that game. I talked about that in the takeaways video from yesterday. Michigan just got pretty lucky. 4 turnovers in that game, and somehow they were able to prevail in that game. Now, what keeps Michigan in the top 20 is the 2 losses that they have, USC and Oklahoma. Those are 2, top 15 teams. And Michigan lost those games by double digits. So, yeah, Michigan definitely should be in the top 20 for that reason. They don't have a massive win on their resume. I mean, the win definitely is not there for them, but hopefully they'll get some kind of big win somewhere or another. And they've had a pretty easy schedule this year. They haven't really, played some of the top teams, at home this year. Maybe Nebraska is probably their best win since they probably are a 3-loss team. And they also have a win over Washington. So a couple of wins over 3-loss teams. But yeah, Michigan just doesn't have much of a resume to move into the top 15. Michigan, though, at number 17. Virginia at number 16. I think Virginia with, Chad Morris in at quarterback. I think, this team, is much better with him in there. Unless I said his name wrong, Chandler Morris or Chad Morris. I think Virginia is definitely a much better team with him in there at quarterback. And they took care of business against Duke. I know the game looked kind of closer a little bit, but it was not even all that close. Yeah, Virginia looks like a much better football team with Chandler Morris in there at quarterback. So yeah, Virginia continues to move on. The win over Louisville doesn't look great for them, but this is a pretty good football team. And the loss to Wake Forest kind of does help out their resume just a little bit to be in the top 20. So Virginia at number 16. All right, 11 through 15, we got USC at number 15, Miami at number 14, Vanderbilt at number 13, Utah at 12, and then BYU at number 11. So USC, they have a win over Michigan. They also have a win over, a loss to Notre Dame. Let's go over their wins. They have a win over, Iowa, who is now a 6-4 team. That's a decent win. It's not a bad win for them. It's a decent win nonetheless. And then their best win is probably by far Michigan. So yeah, that's what really keeps USC ahead of Michigan, is because of that head-to-head scenario. Now the 2 losses, one of them comes to a 3-loss Illinois team, which is not a bad loss if you look back at it now. I mean, Illinois has kind of been better as of late. And then they have a loss to Notre Dame. So that's what puts USC here in the top 15. And then also the win over Michigan. That puts them in the top 15 as well. So USC at number 15. Miami at number 14. They took care of business, of course, against NC State. That's not a great win for them, but also it really kind of did tell us a little bit about Miami, that this is a team that, is still not going away. And I also forgot to mention USC's game against, Iowa. They were down by 11 at the half, but, they came back in that game and scored I think, probably 11 unanswered points, or maybe 10 points if I'm, just kind of mistaken there. But yeah, USC at number 15, Miami again, took care of business against NC State. They have a much better resume compared to USC. In my opinion. It's kind of pretty even between these two teams, except what really keeps Miami out of the top 10 is the loss to SMU, who is a 3-loss team, which is not bad. And then they also have a loss to a 3-loss Louisville team. So they lost to a couple of 3-loss teams, but what keeps them in the top 15 is the win over Notre Dame. So yeah, Miami at number 14 for that reason. Vanderbilt at number 13 did not play this past weekend. Vanderbilt a couple of losses to Texas, who is a 3-loss team. And then they have a loss to a 2-loss Alabama team. So that's what's really keeping Vanderbilt in the top 15. Although the Texas loss doesn't look really good now for them. I mean, obviously Vanderbilt, is not really in the top 10 for that reason. And they don't really have a strong resume. I mean, they have a win over a 7-3 Missouri team. I believe maybe a 6-3 Missouri team if I can't remember. I think it is a 7-3 Missouri team. So that's really what keeps Vanderbilt in the top 15 for that, win over Missouri. And then Utah at number 12. The couple of losses coming to Texas Tech and BYU. Those are two really good losses. They have a win over Arizona State, and that's really what keeps Utah in the top 15. The losses and then the win, of course, over Arizona State, who is a 3-loss team. BYU at number 11. BYU, not a strong resume, but they have a loss to Texas Tech, and they also have a win over Utah. So for the head-to-head here, that's the reason why BYU and Utah still remain next to each other, and then also the reason why BYU, is ahead of Utah for that reason. So yeah, head-to-head does matter here between these two teams, and we saw Utah take care of business against Baylor. That was a pretty strong win there for the Utes to keep their kind of Big 12 championship hopes alive, even with the two losses. And then for BYU, they dominated TCU. I mean, a much-needed bounce-back win here for the Cougars, especially after losing to Texas Tech from last weekend. All right, let's go to the top 10 now. So some major changes here to the top 10. I got Oregon at number 10. They don't really have a strong resume. I mean, obviously the win is not really there for them, but, you look at the loss to Indiana. That's what really keeps Oregon in the top 10, if that makes sense. But they do have a strong, chance to maybe boost their resume this weekend when they do play USC at home. That'll be a chance for Oregon to kind of get a big win on their resume. So yeah, Oregon is not in the top 5 because they don't have a strong win, but really what keeps them in the top 10 is definitely the loss to Indiana, and they lost that game by 10. So Oregon at number 10 for that reason. Notre Dame at number 9. Notre Dame has a couple of losses to top 15 teams in Texas A&M and Miami. That's what really keeps them in the top 10 as well. But they have wins over USC, Navy. I mean, those are two big wins against 2-loss teams. And they also have a win over Boise State, who I think is a 3-loss team, if I'm not mistaken. That's not a bad, win. That's like a decent win there for Notre Dame. And then they also have a win over Pitt now, who is a 3-loss team. So Notre Dame, I think, is starting to kind of build a resume. Again, the 2 losses is what really keeps them in the top 10. The losses by 1 possession to Texas A&M and Miami. So yeah, Notre Dame at number 9, but just not in the top 5 for that reason. Alabama at number 8. So Alabama drops for me after losing to Oklahoma. I mean, offensively, the wide receivers kind of just struggled in this game, and the defense kind of gave up a little bit too much explosive passing plays. And yeah, Ty Simpson got pressured in this game, and you could tell that Oklahoma defense is very tough to go up against. So Alabama does drop for me. What keeps Alabama in the top 10, though, is definitely the win over Georgia, and then they also have a couple of losses. Now, one of those 2 losses comes to Florida State, who is a really bad football team. So yeah, Florida State definitely is what keeps Alabama in the top, not out in the top 10, but outside the top 5, if that makes sense. And then the 1 loss coming to Oklahoma. That was enough for me to still keep Alabama in the top 10. And then also the wins over, like I said, Georgia. And then they also have another win over, Tennessee, who is a 3-loss team. Missouri is a 3-loss team, while Vanderbilt is also probably their second best win, and that is a 2-loss team as well. So Alabama at number 8. Texas Tech at number 7, they have a pretty strong resume. They have 3 strong wins against Big 12 teams, BYU, Utah, and Houston. Those are 3 really good wins. And then they were 1 loss coming to Arizona State, who is a 3-loss team. And they're outside the top 20 for me. So, yeah, Texas Tech has a very strong resume. And then Oklahoma at number 6. Obviously, the win over Alabama was enough for me to put them in the top 10. This Oklahoma team has a couple of losses. They have a loss to, obviously Ole Miss. And then they have another loss to, I believe, another team, Texas. That's what really keeps them out of the top 5 because Texas is a 3-loss team. And I think, because of the head-to-head over Ole Miss, that's the reason why I put Ole Miss in the top 5 for that reason. So we go to the top 5 now. Again, there is Ole Miss at number 5 because of the head-to-head over Oklahoma. That was the reason why I put Ole Miss ahead of Oklahoma for that head-to-head matchup. And I know Ole Miss doesn't have a strong resume, but the win over Oklahoma is huge for them. And then the win over Tulane is a 2-loss Tulane team. So while the resume may not be great for them with the 1 loss to Georgia, which obviously they're behind Georgia because of the head-to-head, I think that makes sense to put Ole Miss here in the top 5. Georgia at number 4. Yeah, they lost to Alabama. I know they should be behind Alabama, but Alabama's 1 loss, of course, coming to Florida State in one of those 2 losses. That's the reason why I kept Georgia ahead of Alabama for that reason. And if Alabama didn't lose, to probably, Florida State and Oklahoma, I think Alabama would definitely still be ahead of Georgia for that reason. But yeah, Georgia, again, a win over Texas, it's not huge for them. I mean, it's a 3-loss Georgia team, but the win over Ole Miss, probably their best win by far of the season. So yeah, Georgia at number 4 for that reason. And then Texas A&M at number 3. Boy, these 2 teams, Texas A&M and Indiana, were very close games in the last couple of weeks. Indiana had that tight game against a 3-win Penn State team, and then Texas A&M kind of the same way against South Carolina. Who was a little bit worser in those 2 games? I would say it would have to be Texas A&M because they were down 30-3 at halftime, but they came back and did just enough to win it, by scoring 27 unanswered points. Yeah, they were down 27 at the half, and Texas A&M made one of the craziest comebacks in school history. And Texas A&M, the win over Notre Dame is kind of similar to Indiana's win over, Oregon. So yeah, 2 very similar resumes, but different records. But yeah, I think Indiana, I think they should be ahead of Texas A&M for that reason. And yeah, Texas A&M, they're at number 3 for this reason because of the performance against South Carolina. But yeah, Indiana does jump up to number 2 for me, especially after Alabama losing. But Ohio State's still number 1 for me. I've had this team ever since week 1 in my top 25 at number 1, especially after the win over Texas, which obviously doesn't look great, but they just continue to blow teams out. And for that reason, the Buckeyes should still be at number 1 for that reason. So that is my top 5. Again, some major changes here to the top 25 as we head into week number 13 and the final 2 weeks of the regular season of the 2025 college football season. Let me guys know what you think about my top 25 and give me your top 25 down in the comments below. Thank you for watching this video and stay tuned for more on the NCAA College Sports YouTube channel.